Welcome to Monday through Sunday. I'm Logan.
I'm Sanam.
And I'm Lane. We're best friends, the founders of Blossom Brands, and the hosts of this podcast.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes of running a 7-figure agency with our best friends.
We're sharing our mistakes, our lessons learned, and giving you tactical advice to build the career, the business, and the relationships you dream of, and a life you don't need a weekend to escape from.
So let's get balanced and let's get down to business. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Monday through Sunday podcast. We are here and we are back with new mics, which might I add, we are so proud of and excited for. As new podcasters, relatively new and amateur in this space, audio quality is so important. But when I tell you we're learning as we go, it is a process. And our first mics, albeit they were okay, there were a few episodes where we put out, we're like, ouch, this isn't making us happy. So we have new mics, we are here, and we're changing up the dynamic a little bit. You also may notice that we are a duo, not a trio. So our third partner in crime, Lane, actually gave birth to her little baby boy.
Yay!
We are
have a
so
blossom
excited
baby.
for her. Truly, it's crazy the way it happened. We'll have her on one day to tell her story and her version of it. But nonetheless, baby boy arrived happy and healthy. Family is great. And we're really excited for her to take this time off to enjoy her time with her new little family. So we miss you, Lane. We love you. But Logan and I got it. So first off, Logan, how are you doing? I know you just moved this week, so I don't even know how you're podcasting right now. But hello, hi.
Oh, hi. I am just sitting here in the middle of my living room. Moving boxes are stacked to the left of me, but we are here. We are so excited to be recording because it's been a long time since we've chatted. Just to catch everyone up, I recently moved from Dallas to an hour across town to Fort Worth. I went to school at TCU, so I'm moving back to Fort Worth after about 5 years in Dallas. So really excited to be here. And my boyfriend and I moved into a house. So Ruby, my dog, is very excited to have her backyard. And
It was for her. It wasn't for you.
Yes, 100%. Oh my gosh, I just did it. Should we talk about it?
Yeah, we need to talk about it.
So we have gotten such amazing feedback since launching the podcast. I feel like it's just been so overwhelming how kind and supportive people have been. We're really starting to actually build an audience, which is really exciting. And we're just so happy to be connecting with people. But with that, we've been keeping an eye on our reviews on Apple Podcasts. And I don't want to say that we got our first troll because it was still a 4-star review, which we're very appreciative of. But this review mentioned something that actually after we had recorded our first episode, we all noticed this on our own. So it was just really funny.
I actually didn't notice it until you guys texted me.
I did.
You and Lane both noticed it. I didn't even realize this was happening.
Yeah. So to tell you what was happening, basically, you know how when you start to hang out with people too much and you realize you start to pick up their little mannerisms or sayings or whatever? Well, as a group of 3 best friends, apparently our little catchphrase is saying 100% after every single time someone says something smart. And so too Swifty for ever, we agree with you. We hear you. And at least we're self-aware and we will try to work on it, I promise, because you were correct that we say that way too much and we will try to stop.
I want to quickly introduce our episode that we'll be talking about egg freezing. So I froze my eggs back in July of this year, and it was a process. And I feel like so many people have asked me a million questions about the process. So I figured what better than to record a full dedicated episode about all things egg freezing, the cost, the logistics, the timing, everything tied to this crazy, physically, emotionally taxing process to give people the insight so they can feel armed to make their own decision that works best for them in their situation. But before we get into that, I would love to segue into our personal and professional best. Logan, do you have a personal and professional best this week?
So I kind of touched on mine a little bit, but really my life is just consumed with moving right now. But I will say this is a combo personal professional because throughout this whole process, I've been so grateful to have a job where I can really honestly put on the back burner when I need to and focus on my personal life. I would say I've been going pretty hard with work lately with the podcast because I've just been so excited about everything that we're doing. So I've kind of flip-flopped in this last 2 weeks or so. I've really kind of pulled back on work and focused on my personal life. And I've just been so grateful to have the type of job that has the flexibility and the space to do that when I need to do that. So I've just been feeling really grateful to have a nice balance between my personal and professional life. So those are both my personal and professional bests.
I love that so much, and you really needed this time because you have actually been going so hard with work over the past month. So this disconnect, I feel like if you weren't going to take it, I was going to force you into it myself. So I'm very happy to hear that. Now, shall we transition into all things egg freezing?
Yes.
Okay.
And to start off, can we just explain like egg freezing? Like, are we talking about scrambled eggs? Like, what is egg freezing for somebody who has no idea what this topic is?
Good question. So egg freezing is basically the process of a woman extracting the eggs from her ovaries and freezing them. The reason I personally did it is because I am 30 years old. I don't know when I want to have eggs, but I just want to make sure that when I do, did I say I don't know when I want to have eggs?
Yeah, you meant kids.
I don't know when I want to have kids, and I want to be able to take my time making that decision. And so that was my personal choice in doing
That
it.
makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, like our bodies are on this biological clock that like modern day society doesn't really follow anymore because like people aren't getting married at age 13 anymore. And so it's just like a really crazy thing that like I think is really mature and really smart that you were able to think ahead and like act in the now and sacrifice in the now in the interest of your future self and what you want for yourself in the future.
Totally. And it's one of those things where you can control so many parts of your life, but your egg quality is one thing that you do not have control over. And that alone was a big deciding factor in me wanting to take this journey and this step for myself. So now my eggs are frozen, literally frozen on ice. So the time that I'm ready for them, I will need to Is defrost the right word?
I mean, it makes sense.
I don't know if that's the right word, but basically I will have to defrost them and fertilize them with sperm to then form an embryo, and then they would be implanted inside me.
Got it.
Did I do a good job at explaining that? I don't think I did.
No, I think you did because I'm someone, I didn't really know what this process was like until you went through it this summer. So I'm a good guinea pig because I don't know all the details. So that's why I'm really excited to chat today. So yeah, let's start from the beginning, back it way up.
I don't even think I've told you the whole process.
No, I feel like I was like with you through it, but not because I wasn't physically there. So I like knew as you were like going through the steps, like the rough outline, but what it actually entailed. Like I had no idea you were giving yourself shots every day until we did it together on Zoom for your very last shot.
Which we will also get into, aka the trigger shot. So back in May, I reached out to the same doctor that did my family members' egg freezing and reached out to her about setting up a consultation. The consultation was set up about 3 weeks later, and she walked me through the entire process, which I really thought I was aware of going into, but I actually had no understanding of it. So first off, there's a difference between freezing eggs and freezing embryos. So freezing eggs is obviously the egg just comes from the woman, but the embryo is when the egg and the sperm come together and form an embryo, which is like essentially
fertilized.
A child. Fertilized egg. And from there, you're able to see the gender, any like quality issues. I don't know why. It sounds so weird talking about that in terms
it's kind
of
a hard topic to talk about, but I think it's important just to like describe things as they are and know as the audience, we're here to just like educate and we're learning along, or I'm learning alongside from Sanam's experience. So I don't think, Sanam, we need to worry about saying the wrong things because we're just like describing your experience. And it's, I think saying things in layman's terms helps it be more digestible because I'm someone who I need the 101 dummy version of all this stuff.
Okay, you're totally right about layman's terms, not you being the dummy. Okay, so then she kind of like walked me through the entire process. And I even cut her off when she was telling me about embryos. I was like, I'm single. I don't plan to do this with anyone. She's like, I know. I just want to educate you about the differences in terms of lifespan when you freeze your eggs versus embryos. So when you freeze your eggs, you then like once the eggs are retrieved, they then have to see which ones survive overnight, and then we freeze them. Oh my God, it's not the word defrost, it's thaw. That's what she used.
Oh, okay. I mean, they mean the same thing.
Yeah. So then when you're like, if I want to use the eggs that I froze, then you have to thaw them, then fertilize them, and then implant them. And every step of the process, you are losing eggs along the way. Because anytime you're going to the next phase, it's a high probability that not all of them will survive the next phase. So when you immediately retrieve and then fertilize them, they have a higher probability of getting more eggs at the finish line, which is when you have the embryos and implanting them, versus if you're just going eggs to freezing. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So an egg on its own has a harder time surviving than like a fertilized embryo.
Correct.
Okay. That's interesting.
So she was making me aware of all of my options, and I was like, it doesn't change anything, but I feel like I'm making an informed decision, understanding what all the options are.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next step from there is coming in for a vaginal ultrasound on day 2 or 3 of your next cycle. And I had never done a vaginal ultrasound before, and I don't. Logan, have you done one?
I have, and I did not know what I was getting myself into.
I feel like we just as women don't talk about like what this entails. I thought this ultrasound process was just going to be what I see on TV, which is like them doing it on my stomach.
The jelly on your tummy.
Literally. No, instead that jelly just goes onto this lubed up apparatus that's going deep inside your vagina, going to your ovaries and checking your ovarian reserve. And you're just like looking at it on a screen. I'm like, I don't care. Just get this thing out of me. I'm so over it. And then after you finish, you have to go and do a blood test. And then the doctor reviews everything, then calls you and lets you know what the status of things are. So in this case, she told me that I was ready to move forward. Everything looked good. She gave me my follicle count, which I believe was 20 at the time. And she's like, everything looks great. So if you want to move forward, we can get you scheduled.
And when you say ready to move forward, do you mean that she was like, based on your count, we do recommend that you go through with this, or just based on where you're at in your cycle, this is your time to get started? Like, what did you mean by ready to move forward?
So in that sense, because I know one of my friends, after she did her vaginal ultrasound and her blood test, she had to go on medication for 3 months to like stabilize some things in her body. Like your hormones have to be in check.
So they're doing like a general wellness check to see if everything is firing on all cylinders, that like these would be like good eggs to retrieve kind of.
Exactly. For me personally, like I just knew that my body was going to be okay because I had dealt with 2 rounds of long COVID for 2 years. So I had made it my life's mission and purpose just to make sure my hormones were in check, my body was in check, my energy was stable again. So once she gave me the confirmation, I decided that I was like, okay, let's do it. I'm ready to move forward. And so from there, she put me on birth control for 5 days, which
like the birth control pill.
The birth control pill. Ugh,
okay.
I hate birth control and any type of like added hormones to your body. I absolutely hate. For me personally, I just feel like my body is extra sensitive, and I thought 5 days of it would do absolutely nothing. It's just 5 days. Like if I'm not doing it for 30 days, it's not becoming this entire routine. But man, when I tell you the sensitivity I experienced for those 5 days, I was so sensitive. Like everything hurt my feelings. I was emotional. It was rough. But that being said, after those 5 days, you have to go in for another ultrasound and another blood test to make sure, okay, now that your body has these hormones added, how are we doing? What's the physical state? Okay. Doctor reviews one more time, then calls you.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what's the point of getting on the birth control? So it's adding additional hormones?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
So then once everything checked out from there, she then gave me the okay to begin ordering the injections, which started a few days after I finished my birth control. So we had 2 injections that I had to do at night, and I had to do them the same time every single night, which I was annoyed because the first night they got delivered late, so I didn't start them till 9 p.m., which means that I had to wait to do them at 9 p.m. every single night. And I love being in bed at 8:30, so it was just one thing that I had to like wait for to do, which was like kind of annoying.
Wait, Sanam, I'm going to interrupt and ask a dumb question. What do the injections do?
Okay. Wow. I can't believe I didn't explain this. Thank you. Okay. So the injections are basically telling your body to like create more eggs, because in every cycle that you go through, your body creates 1 egg. And so because you want to be extracting as many eggs as possible, these injections are basically added hormones in your body. So it creates as many eggs it can possibly create.
Okay, so you're injecting yourself with this hormone essentially that's amping up your body's production of eggs. And
Correct.
Then you have to time it a certain way to like make sure it's like keeping up a steady rhythm, or like what's the significance of the timing?
I don't know. They just told me I needed to do it at the same time every single night. So I just assume it's like this like orderly process.
Okay. So we're just following the directions that we've been given by our doctor. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was 2 injections. And let me tell you, that first night I had such bad anxiety figuring out how to inject myself.
That gives me like chills just thinking about having to stab yourself in the stomach.
I honestly wish I had a friend here to do it with me. I just thought I could do it myself. Thankfully, TikTok makes it so easy. There were so many nurses talking about these exact medications and just explaining it in a way that was so clear and so direct.
So you literally found TikTok tutorials on this?
Yes, because for some reason I couldn't find the videos in my email that were like the step-by-step process. And so I was like stressed out thinking that I just had to go to like—
The only logical solution would be to revert to TikTok, as any good millennial would do. I told my doctor that
and she laughed so hard. I was like, literally, it was so helpful. You have no idea. And it was like nurses. It wasn't just like some randos injecting themselves. And so the nurses on TikTok helped me figure out how to inject myself. And I remember like I FaceTimed like one person during my first injection, then FaceTime another person during my next injection. And I didn't know how it was going to feel. I was so scared.
And were these two back-to-back, two injections back-to-back?
Yeah, you have to do them back-to-back.
Okay.
But the injection does not hurt at all. It's literally like if you're not afraid of needles, which I'm not, it was very easy.
Oh, I am so afraid of needles.
Okay, well, hopefully you don't have to go through this process one day, but if you do, I will fly to Texas. I will be there for 2 weeks and we'll do it together.
I will like be obedient while someone else stabs me with it, but like to be stabbed, like just be stabbing myself, like I don't think I have the self-control.
I've seen a lot of videos of people, because then my whole feed just became IVF egg freezing content.
Right.
And I saw a lot of videos of people's partners like injecting themselves. And when I was doing it to myself, I felt so bad. So I'm like, she's so independent. She can do this. And just like stabbing myself in the stomach every single night. And during this process, you are also going in for the same ultrasound and blood test every other day.
So every day you're giving yourself injections, and then every other day you're going for an ultrasound and blood test?
Yes. Okay. And then they call you after they review the results and are just telling you where you're at in terms of how things are progressing, if things are looking good. And they said it would take about 12 to 14 days. In my case, like after I did about 10 days of it, they said I would need to order more medication because I would need extra days. And so—
How many extra days did you do?
I think I did 14 days in total.
Okay. And so you would say that's on the higher end.
Correct.
So 12 to 14 days of stabbing yourself every day and going to the doctor every other day.
Literally.
Okay. What happens after that?
Okay. So the last few days, I had to add a third injection to take in the morning. The AM injections, I would say, were a little bit more painful than what I had experienced in the past.
Oh, really?
And they were
also
it like
a different hormone?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different type of shot. And so that was my AM injection. And then I would go in. I remember this day specifically was a Friday, and I retrieved, I believe, on the following Tuesday. So I went in Friday for this appointment, and I guess I'm also going to tie in the emotional aspect of it now.
I know what you're about to talk about.
Oh, this day. I was inconsolable on this day. I was a mess. And so I go in for my appointment, and this day I'm actually meeting my doctor in person, because every time I'm going in every other day, I'm doing it with the nurses, the vaginal ultrasound and then the blood test. And I do it on the first floor every single time. It's like the first floor is like where they do their routine appointments, where people are coming and going for these quick 5-minute appointments of their checks, whatever. Mm-hmm. My doctor was like, come to the 5th floor. I'll do all of your appointments with you today so we can talk about what to expect.
Because you're like nearing the end of the process, right?
Exactly. And she's like, I'm in office. I would love to meet you, whatever. And then I go in, and it's the 5th floor, so it's like I walk in and it's all these couples just like waiting there together to either talk to doctors about the process, or people that are waiting to go in for their retrievals, people that are there for IVF, whatever. I go in and I do my appointment with my doctor. First off, she makes me feel so comfortable. I ask her a million questions.
Good.
I absolutely love her. She also was like, Sanam, you're not spreading your legs wide enough for these vaginal ultrasounds.
Oh,
and I was
my
like,
gosh.
oh, great. Okay. So she then like just spread my legs for me. And it was a time.
Oh my gosh. I'm dying right now.
I just
Talk about a first impression.
Oh, literally. She was like, Sanam, you need to be so much wider. And then it just went right in. And I was like, wow.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much. And then talk to the nurses, talk to the doctor. And then she was like, I expect you to maybe retrieve Sunday, maybe retrieve Monday. We'll see. Keep doing your things, come back in, and we'll assess.
Okay.
And so...
And what is she waiting for? What is she timing this, like, when it's time to retrieve?
She was just looking at my results, and she was like, the eggs are not ready just yet.
And is that like the quantity, or is that like the maturity of the eggs that you have?
I think maturity of the eggs.
Okay, got it. So she's just like watching their growth.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And like when I saw the computer screen at this appointment versus my first appointment, it was very different from what it looked like. I could actually see all the new egg growth.
Okay, that's
which
what I was
is
going to
wild.
ask. I didn't know if that was a dumb question. Like, do you just see the little cluster, like the little circles?
Yeah, it looked so different from what I saw in my first one.
Weird.
It just looked blank on my first one. Then this one, it was
Okay.
just like a party in my uterus. Then I left and I all of a sudden got hyper emotional in the car because I think it was like that first realization that I was going through this process by myself and like not with a partner like most people do. And it was really challenging because I feel like the emotions of this process are a lot. It's very physically taxing and your hormones are going absolutely crazy. I told my doctor, I was like, everyone and everything is annoying me. And she was like, this is so normal and expected. I just need you to know that. And so I think like leaving that appointment with all of the emotions tied to it, it was a lot. And then I got in the car, called some friends, and then like absolutely lost my shit over the phone to more people than I would like to admit. It was just a very emotional day. Then later, the nurse called me that day and she was like, okay, it's looking good. I don't think you're going to trigger just yet. But like, this is what it's looking like. It's looked like you'll probably retrieve Tuesday or Wednesday. And I was like, okay, great. Thank you so much. And then I was like, by the way, like, do you know how many eggs I expect to retrieve? And just speaking transparently, I didn't know if I would feel comfortable sharing this process on this episode because it's such a personal thing and it's very sensitive, but I figured the more information to equip people with, the better. So I asked her how many eggs do you expect? She was like, oh, let me count. And she had counted. She was like, oh, I expect 14 to 15. And I had known a lot of people that have frozen their eggs, whether it was in their late 20s to late 30s. So I had kind of, with my small sample size, given myself this prediction of this baseline of I wanted at least 20 eggs. And when I heard that, I lost my shit again. And I was like ugly crying in Beverly Hills sitting on this corner. Like I was just losing it. And then my sister-in-law called me and she was just like, let it out as soon as I answered the FaceTime. And I just like lost it. And I had so many people call me and they were like, Sanam, like, this is okay. Like it is fine. And I think I am an Enneagram 3, so I'm an achiever. And so naturally in this particular instance, I was bringing that achieving mindset on something that I couldn't control. But I truly felt inconsolable that day. I felt like my hormones were going crazy. I was so emotional. And then when I was talking to my nurse, I was like, wouldn't you expect more from me? And she was like, you know, with your age and where you're at, I probably would, but this is also completely within the average amount that people retrieve. But if you want, you can talk to the doctor about doing another round and talk to her about family planning. And I was just like, run the other way. I do not want to have this conversation. This is not a conversation that makes me feel comfortable. Talking about family planning, like I'm already going through this very vulnerable process. I don't want to talk about how many kids I want. You couldn't pay me $10,000 to go through this process again. Like I am drained. I am tired. Like I don't want to be doing this one more freaking time.
Right.
But,
and also just being at the finish line of the process, like your hormones, like you said, are at a peak, all-time high. And I know you, so I know you are that achiever. So any kind of numerical baseline that you're able to kind of weigh yourself against, just to know where you fell on a scale compared to other people. And I think that's the thing, is like comparison, as we know, is the thief of joy. So because you knew that people got more eggs than you did, it took away from the like good news that you did get the number of eggs that you got.
Totally. And I just want to remind anyone that is considering going through this process or has gone through this process, you cannot compare yourself to other women. Like every body is different. And you are doing yourself such a disservice because you should truly treat your body like it's on a lily pad throughout this entire experience because it's so sensitive. It's so hard. It's so taxing. Or any result that your body is able to deliver and produce for you is something that should be celebrated and honored. And I wish I told myself that, even though so many people did tell me that. It's just one of those situations where, again, I was inconsolable that day.
Right.
Like, I was answering the phone like in the ugliest tears possible. But onto the trigger shots. So then I was like, this is my fate, whatever. I started my trigger shots, which I believe I had 2 of them. And my last one I did with Logan. And it was on Zoom because I had to do it exactly 24 hours before my retrieval. So I was like, okay, this is when I have my meeting with Logan. So might as well just do it together.
Yep.
And
Core memory.
I was quite the needle queen that day. I was like,
you are
I know
a
how
pro
to do
at
this.
that point. You're like flicking it, and I was like just watching you on Zoom, like jaw on the floor, like you are a badass, but also holy shit.
It was such a process. And so we did our last one. It was
I
all
cheered
done.
you on the whole way. I was like, I don't know what to
cheered me
say.
on.
So I was just like, go, Sanam, go, girl.
No,
like,
you were
I'm like, what do
so
you say
supportive.
to somebody who's like stabbing themselves? So yeah, it was really a bonding moment for us.
It was really great. And so then the next day, my appointment was, I believe, at 9 a.m. So then my sister-in-law came. She took me to the doctor. We were waiting in the waiting room. I went in and got my clothes on and was wheeled in. And they put me under. And by
Wait,
the
clothes
time,
on or clothes off? Right?
like put my gown on, my hospital gown on.
Oh, okay.
And then
Clothes
she
off, spreads legs.
spreads legs, went in. So they put me under local anesthesia and they had me say a sentence. And by the time I was done saying the sentence, I was out. And I just remember waking up in the recovery room.
Wow.
And
So
I
you like
was-
were wheeled into an operating room, like you saw the operating room?
Oh, yeah.
I've never had surgery, so I've never like experienced that. Were you chill? Like, were you freaking out? Like, how were you
was
feeling in
calm.
that moment?
I think I was so calm because I really trusted my doctor. And before
Okay.
we went in, when I was just laying on the little bed, like before they wheeled me in, she came and talked to me. And it was just
Okay.
like, she had a very maternal energy, which I feel
That's
like
great.
is so important for this type of role. I could not love my doctor enough. And so when I went in, she was just talking to me and I just felt so comfortable. And after I woke up and I
How
was
long
in
is the
a lot of
procedure?
pain. It was
How long
about
does it
30
take?
minutes.
Okay.
And another thing that I didn't know was how they actually retrieve it. I just thought like,
I don't know either.
This little metal device goes in and kind of grabs your eggs, but that's not the case. Kind of like a pap smear, I would assume.
Okay.
It's not like that. So your ovaries are very bloated because
Okay.
you go from having one egg a month to multiple eggs. And so what they do is they puncture a hole and then they suck out the fluids. And then in a lab, they then like separate the fluid from your eggs and then they see how many survive overnight. Then they freeze that amount.
Ugh, that visual.
I know.
You did a good job of explaining, but whoa, that was vivid.
I had no idea that's what it entailed. So my doctor was like, you're going to be even more bloated for 2 days following the procedure because like
Okay.
consider like you just punctured something. It's inflamed
Ugh.
now.
I think it's
And
the word punctured that's getting me.
Puncture.
Stop.
So then I was in a
So
lot
you
of
wake
pain.
up and you're in a lot of pain.
I felt like period cramps. And
Okay.
then the nurses came and I was like, I'm in so much pain. They gave me a lot of medication. They gave me Tylenol. That was like, didn't do much. Then they gave me more medication through my IV and it helped. Then the nurse came to me with my egg count and I was so nervous.
And
I
are
was
you like fully back, like in your right mind, or are you like a little out of it at this point?
It's a little hazy, but
Okay.
like I'm still like able to like process and have a conversation.
Okay.
So they told me that I retrieved 34 eggs. I don't even know how that happened, but I was ecstatic. And again,
34.
I really hate that I was so happy because I was like, oh my God, now I can tell everyone that I told I was going to get 15. I got this. Like they should be so proud, like an achievement / accomplishment thing versus like
that's the Enneagram 3.
so hard. I was like, I just
And
wanna
you beat
take
your
the time.
goal. You beat your goal of 30 by 4.
My PR.
You overachieved your PR.
I was just like upset
Fertile
that-
queen.
I was like, I need to just be proud of what my body did and not feel the need to like.
No, but
correct.
after what a traumatic experience you had, like finding out that you had about 14, like just you had over double that amount. Like
I know,
that
but
is
I
just
hate
like a
even
beautiful.
saying that was traumatic because like literally women
No,
get like 5
But
sometimes.
I think your feelings are valid. I think your feelings are
Yeah.
valid. I think you can have empathy for others who may have had a different experience, but also give validity to your feelings because they were real, because you
Yeah.
had expectations for yourself. And this is a high stakes topic. So I think that's like a huge lesson is what you went through is just as valid.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that context.
Yeah.
Now, when I finished this process, I can't even tell you this like sense of like gratitude I had was so strong. I was so emotional for this process. And I felt like a switch just flipped in me where I was beaming with joy, so happy. I remember I went on my hot girl walk that afternoon. I was like, wow, like I have these eggs now that are frozen that I can use whenever I want. There's no rush for me. I mean, granted, you never know how things are going to go, but relatively speaking, there's no rush for me. I can take the time to make my own decisions at my own pace. I have this luxury to do this. Like, this is such a privilege. And I remember having so much gratitude for the nurses and doctors specifically, because I am emailing them every day with like questions like, can I still do Botox when I'm doing this? Can I still do this while I'm doing this? It's basically like you're literally like pregnant essentially. Like you cannot do anything. You like stay away from caffeine,
no Botox.
all of it, literally no Botox. She's like, Sanam, just wait. And I was like, can I go in the sauna? She's like, wait 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, great. But they were just like the warmest, sweetest team. And at this time was also when that new like series on, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times came out with this podcast series about crazy egg freezing stories about these crazy doctor's office. It's called The Retrievals. And it talked about how a lot of women like thought they were being given like local anesthesia and were given no medication when they
For
were.
the retrieval? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Was that like malpractice?
I have no idea. I think so. I didn't listen to it. I was like, there's no way I will be listening to this.
Yeah, maybe if you're listening to this episode and you're at all interested in egg freeze, probably don't listen to this podcast.
Yes. But that being said, it just made me have so much gratitude for these nurses that were just so patient and so sweet. So always thank your teams because they are doing this day in and day out. And they're just here to support you. And so it really made me feel so much gratitude.
Absolutely. And with that being said, Sanam, do you want to drop for any of our listeners who are in LA? Do you want to share the name of the clinic you went to and your doctor in case anybody's interested in seeing them?
Yeah. So I went to Southern California Reproductive Center. It's in Beverly Hills. And I saw Dr. Lena Akopians. And like I said, I could not love her enough. She is just the absolute gem of a human and she is incredible. And as for the costs associated, I will say it is not cheap. Every clinic charges a different price, but my clinic, it was about $15,000 all in. And that is broken down to $6,000 for the procedure, $6,000 for 10 years of storage. So obviously if you're doing short storage for a shorter amount of time, it's going to be cheaper, and about $3,000 for the medication.
Wow. That is not cheap.
Not cheap at all. I know some people that like have average like 10 to 12,000. So it really just depends on where you're doing it, but always do your research.
Wow. Okay. And is this something that insurance covers at all or is it completely out of pocket?
They check with your insurance beforehand. For me, and my insurance didn't cover it because like I think it's like covered for like fertility issues. Okay. And for me, I wasn't going in for fertility issues.
Wow. So if you're kind of going about the process proactively, you can't necessarily get the insurance coverage. That's a little bit sad.
I think so. I think that's the case. And speaking of that, I really wanted to talk about it specifically, or talk about the egg freezing process, having a dedicated episode, because so many women go in when they feel like they have to. And that's not a bad thing either. It's just more common. My doctor was
And what do you mean by that? Feel like they have to?
They go in once they've tried to conceive naturally and they're unable to, and so then they start seeking outside help. And that is absolutely a realistic reason to go. But in terms of like planning ahead, like my doctor was like, we don't see as many cases in terms of people like you that are coming in and just retrieving proactively when they're of age. And obviously the of age period ranges, but I am very happy with the timing that I chose for myself. And I think a lot of women really struggle with making this decision because it's kind of like what I was describing earlier in the episode, where it's like you're faced with this hardcore life decision where you're like, I don't know if this is for me. Like I just, maybe later. I'll think about it in like 6 months.
And at the end of the day, you don't even know if you're going to use these eggs. Like you may never use them. So it really is like having to make this really hard, emotionally, physically taxing decision. It's really like an insurance policy.
100%.
For lack of a better word. And I just really think, again, it's so admirable that you did this. And it speaks to the fact that it's rare that not as many people are proactive about it. So I think if we could just encourage like one listener about how Sanam has felt about her experience to kind of get to know your fertility a little bit ahead of the game. I think what Sanam brought up was a great point of not a lot of people think about these things before they're actively trying to have a child. And like me, for example, I'm not actively trying to have a child, but I think it'd be really beneficial to get a sense of like what my fertility looks like, just so that you know and you are armed with that information, because information truly is power. So I really just think going through this process the way you did, proactively and on your own, definitely not for the faint of heart. Like, I really want to applaud you for that. But I also just think it's really inspiring and you should be really, really proud of yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And when I was going through this process, when it was so taxing, and then also being around my brother and sister-in-law when they had a then, I don't even know, like 8-month-old, and seeing how hard it is to have a baby, I was like, is this like a good investment of my time? Like, I don't know. Like, this is a lot. Like, this is hard. Do I even want to do this? And then my therapist reminded me that it's not about whether or not I want kids. It's about taking the time to decide what I want for myself. And I don't have to feel like I'm in a rush to make that decision. So that was the best advice that I ever got for this process. And like I said earlier, treat your body like it's on a lily pad. Give it whatever it needs. It's very sensitive, and your body needs to be operating at its best, considering that it's literally producing a significant amount of eggs in this cycle. So nurture it, give it love, do whatever you need for yourself, and don't feel like you need to overextend yourself. This is a sensitive time. Honor it, relax, rest, and that's exactly what I did. And now I ended the process, 30 eggs frozen. So grateful I did it, and here for anyone that wants to discuss it.
Well, Sanam, thank you again so much for sharing your experience with egg freezing. I think this is such an important topic, and I'm glad we were able to shed just a bit of light on it. And for anyone who's listening who may be interested in this process for themselves, please don't hesitate to shoot us a DM. Sanam, I don't want to speak for you, but I will. I know we'd be happy to chat with you and answer your questions. So with that being said, just to close us out, wanted to leave you guys with an action item of the week. As you know, this is our segment where we recommend either a podcast, a book, an article, or even a little luxury that we've been loving lately. And for this week, since it's just Sanam and I here, this week's action item is to read the book Happy Place by Emily Henry, which if you've been a regular listener of the podcast, you might remember a not so stellar review that Sanam gave to this book a few weeks ago.
Guilty.
However, I did recently read this book as part of a book club that my college girlfriends and I are doing together. And when I saw that book title, I didn't remember that it was the book that Sanam adamantly hated on our podcast. And so I read the book, couldn't put it down. I was obsessed. I am one of those people, like when I love a book, like I won't stop. Like when I was a kid, my mom used to hide my Harry Potter books on top of the refrigerator so that they were too tall for me to reach, because I just like truly wouldn't go to bed. And so anyway, read the book Happy Place and loved it, couldn't put it down. So I just wanted to redeem that book and give our audience an alternate viewpoint, which Sanam and I are notorious for having completely opposite tastes in books. Like we get in little...
we do. Every time you've recommended me a book and I recommended you a book, it's just like never aligned.
I know, which is so funny. So anyway, just wanted to redeem that book, Happy Place by Emily Henry.
Okay, I
thought
also
it was
want
great.
to clarify that like I didn't think the book was like bad. It just like could not keep my attention. And that's the second time it happened. Like I thought it was just like
what do you
average.
mean though? There was so much like emotional tension. I would say sexual tension, but it wasn't really like smut. Like they were just like a
it was
couple.
like trash smut. Like give me the real juicy smut.
It wasn't smut. I wouldn't even like put it in that category.
And then you told me that Ugly Love was like super smutty, and I would say it was like smutty. But
it was super.
It was
What
smutty.
are you talking about? What have you been reading, girl?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, the descriptions.
Am I reading straight porn?
I think you might be.
I don't know.
Actually, another funny reading story when I was in high school, that was when like 50 Shades of Grey came out, and I was a big reader at the time because, you know, in high school, like you weren't allowed to have your cell phone out. So when you were done with your work, you would like read. And I didn't have a Kindle at the time, and I really wanted to read this book. So I stole my mom's Kindle to read this book because I didn't want people in high school to like know what I was reading. And I would like hide my Kindle behind my backpack.
I can't believe you read that in high school.
I know. My mom, my granny, and I all read it, and we just like didn't talk about that we all read it.
Wow.
But we knew that we all read it. But
that
it was like
the
not
OG
a discussion.
Smut. That's like not even smut. That's like
I feel like 50 Shades of Grey made smut. Like it made it a new category. It
smut
pioneered.
is like my favorite category.
50 Shades is like the Kleenex of smut. It's like the brand name, you know?
Oh my God, I remember I watched it with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle, anytime there was a sex scene, he's like, you want popcorn? You want popcorn?
That's always the moment that like your dad walks into the room when that scene is happening on TV, right?
I know, I'm just like comfortable with that. I'm like, our producer's face, Ellie was like, wait, you watched that with your aunt and uncle? Yeah, like I literally am so comfortable with them. It's like totally fine. But I remember he wasn't comfortable anytime a sex scene would come on. He would like literally shove popcorn. He's like, Sanam, you're so hungry, eat this.
And with that, we will wrap up the episode. Thank you, Sanam, for sharing everything with us. And again, for any of you who are listening, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, we would love to hear it. You can send us an email to hello@MondayThroughSundayPod or shoot us a DM on Instagram @MondayThroughSundayPod. That's all we have for you this week, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Monday Through Sunday. If you're building a career, a business, or any relationships, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us.
With that in mind, we would be so grateful if you can spare 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast. Your reviews help spread the message to more people that work doesn't have to suck.
By the way, if you're looking for your community, join us on Instagram and TikTok @MondayThroughSundayPod. We're all about connecting our like-minded listeners together. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about by sending us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.